Hello and welcome to the Utility Week podcast. I'm your host, Rob Horgan, and today I'm joined by Utility Week Editor-in-Chief James Wallin. During this episode, we're going to reflect on the stories which have caught our attention during the first 2 weeks of 2026. We're then going to spend some time picking through the evolving South East water saga, which has gone from bad to worse during the past week. And then we'll look forwards to some major announcements that we're hoping will be made in the coming weeks. So James, Happy New Year. Where shall we start?
It's been lots of news to kick off the year with. So particularly this week has been very busy news week. The contracts for different auctions for offshore wind particularly seem to dominate the headlines. Still kind of delving into the details of that. It's going to take a while for all of the people far cleverer than me to go through the results and gauge whether this was a good result for the industry and for government and for the Clean Power 2030 target. But certainly on the surface of it, I think the majority of people seem to be saying that the government has done well here. I think the extra budget that they found down the back of the sofa seems to have given some confidence to the industry. They procured enough capacity, possibly some people might say more capacity than they actually needed to. It depends, I suppose, on your perspective whether it is better there to over-procure. So they've got around 8 gigawatts of capacity, mainly offshore wind with some floating in there as well. That is above the kind of minimum target that had been set beforehand that we needed to get to Clean Power 2030, which is around 7 gigawatts. So success from that point of view in terms of getting in the generation that we're going to need for Clean Power 2030. The discussions are going to be and have already been about the prices paid and whether the government has committed to us, paying these prices, when at a higher point than they needed to be. Whether they could have waited a little bit longer to procure some of that capacity, and whether the cost would have come down. That obviously is in itself a bit of a gamble. But I suppose my main takeaway from that really is that it's just another example that you can use the same set of figures to prove any arguments, really, if you twist it enough.
Yeah, because the clearing strike price came in much lower than the administrative strike price that they'd set anyway, right? So if we're looking at costs, and it's not a huge amount different from last year's auction, really.
True.
It's sort of minimal. And then I guess my hot take, as it were, from the auctions is what's the point in setting a budget ahead of it?
Yes.
Which was, I know it was a bit of a bone of contention in the run up to it. I don't think the government initially wanted to set a budget, and there was pushback from industry saying we need a budget, just to give us an indication of what you're after. And then they've doubled it anyway. So it's not a small increase, is it? I mean, it's you might as well just make up a number and put that out beforehand. So what's the point? For AR8, I'd be surprised if they bother with a budget again.
It'll be interesting to see, won't it? I mean, it's clearly this has become, over the process of this since the last auction, this has become a real part of the culture wars, I think, in a way that it wasn't before. So I guess that kind of strengthened Desnes's hand in going to the Treasury and saying, look, we really need to deliver on this auction, because if we don't, it's going to really hit those clean power ambitions, which are a big part of Labour's pledge. What the situation will be like for the next auction, I just don't know, and whether they're going to be, so keen to set those expectations beforehand. I don't know. But yeah, it was an interesting one, and it was interesting the optics around it as well. There was a lot of context of offshore wind now being a cheaper form of generation than gas-fired power plants, and that takes me back to the point I was making earlier about you can interpret statistics however you want. A lot of people taking umbrage with the way the government had worked out those figures. But that's clearly a message that they are pushing, because that's come under pressure a lot recently.
Yeah.
That's an angle that people are taking. You know, are renewables really a cheaper form of energy? Are they actually going to bring down your bills? As with anything involved in the energy sector, the answer is really, really complex.
Yeah. Yeah, initially I thought the government had shot themselves in the foot a little bit with that, with putting out all those costings relating to
Yeah.
gas and everything on the same day as, well, literally within minutes of publishing the AR7 results. So and hooking their press release on it so heavily as well. I thought it was because obviously that's what all the nationals picked up on, and depending
Absolutely.
whether
Claire
you were reading
Coutinho of the Tories was straight on that as well, and disputing those figures. Yeah, it was an interesting one, but they came out on the front foot. It's good in terms of the narrative. Certainly, you know, it's good to see the government continuing to back that message. Not that I think they've got any other choice at the moment. It would be, one of the biggest U-turns they've done among a lot of U-turns. But it's good for the energy sector to see them still committed to that goal.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the fallout is over the coming weeks and months, and whether there are any changes are made to the next auction. Moving on, what else has been catching your eye, James, over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, lots of interesting ones. There's lots of things hanging over from last year, as we're going to probably come on to talk about later on. But one story that did catch my eye, which is probably not the biggest story of the week, but Chris Stark, the head of the Clean Power Mission in government, former Climate Change Committee CEO, was giving evidence this week at a committee, and he made what seemed to me like quite a bold claim that supply chain pressures are easing for the electricity transmission networks, and that while this was something that was really keeping him up at night a year ago, he now sees it as less of an issue. And that's, he's been talking to the transmission operators about that. Yeah, I'd question that a little bit. I would still see that as a pretty major barrier. And I think the transmission operators, certainly in public, are understandably keen to present a positive picture on that. But I think behind the scenes, there's still a lot of concern about that. I would worry about complacency on that point. We did a big report and some research last year, which looked across the utilities sector. We did that with PA Consulting. We polled the utilities and we polled their supply chain to look at how deliverable their plans really were. And it was interesting to see the divide between what the utilities thought and what the supply chain thought. So I really hope that utilities don't see this as an opportunity to be complacent, which I'm sure that they won't.
Yeah, it's completely at odds from what we've been hearing over the last few months, right? Not just in transmission, but in water and distribution.
Absolutely.
As well,
Yeah, across the board. Yeah.
I mean, when I looked at that, I did wonder what he actually meant by that, because he didn't really specify, did he?
True.
But when he says supply chain, is he talking about there's going to be enough cables, there's going to be enough stuff to buy, or does he mean like workforce as well? Because I think that's almost the bigger challenge, is making sure there's enough workers, enough contractors, capacity to build all of this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Both are challenges. I mean, the equipment challenges are really acute, as the companies have been very open about that. There are only certain suppliers that do a lot of this stuff, and it takes a long time for new supply chain to get established and to get through the red tape in the industry, and the order books for some of those established suppliers years in advance. And then when it comes to the skills challenge, absolutely, that is a huge issue, both within the supply chain and within the utilities themselves, and attracting those young people, those new skills that we're going to need in the near and the far future. Massive challenge for the sector, and I think they're getting a lot better at it now. A lot better at promoting themselves to young people, but I still think there's a way to go. I think there's a lot of potential there because it's such an exciting industry to enter. Whether you're talking about energy or water, I think there's so much opportunity. We hear a lot that young people want to do jobs with purpose. Well, this is real purpose. Get to do a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of the kind of skills, the sort of gaming skills that that people might look towards one of the tech companies to deploy. But equally, you can do a lot of that stuff in utilities. But I don't think that's particularly widely known.
No. This moves me on quite nicely to the story I wanted to discuss from the last couple of weeks, which was around reservoirs. In particular, the Fens Reservoir. I'm just going to get the story up in front of me now so I can make sure I get it right. In Cambridgeshire, it's a massively important reservoir for the area. Sort of a lot of new housing developments and a new sort of industry that's planning to be set up in Cambridge is sort of completely reliant on this reservoir. And the news coming out, was it last week or earlier this week? I can't remember now. Was that the sort of planning process has been delayed for a third time because designs aren't mature enough. And part of that, which I found quite surprising, to put it politely, is that the water companies, Anglian Water and Cambridge Water, still don't have a clear plan for how they're going to fill the reservoir.
Seems an important point in a reservoir.
It seems an important point at this stage in the process. It seems an important point when you're first starting, and this reservoir has been talked about for what, a decade nearly, probably. There or thereabouts. So I found that quite astonishing, and I think it highlights a wider problem around delivering reservoirs as well. Obviously, before, I think it was last summer, we saw the cost of Thames Water's reservoir in Abingdon, which has recently been named the White Horse, in danger of becoming the White Elephant, as one MP put it. But the cost of that sort of, I think it was nearly trebled, wasn't it? Or roughly trebled. And I think there's a real lack of foresight, I think, in terms of delivering these reservoirs. Personally, in terms of, we've not done one in what must be 40 years now.
Yeah.
When we've been saying 30 years for about 6-7 years, so we must be nearly at 40 years now. And I mean, I've been writing about reservoirs long before I started at Utility Week as well. And the thing that really strikes me is that all the experts are retirement age or very nearly retirement age. If you look at the all reservoir panel of experts, they're all people who were building these reservoirs 30, 40 years ago. And that really came to light when the reservoir dam collapsed up in Derbyshire a few years back now. And at that point, everyone was saying, we need to get more people to deliver all these reservoirs. And I just think every company has gone away and they're all doing it on their own. And I see no joined up thinking in terms of this reservoir delivery. And I just feel like there should almost be like a reservoir delivery task force almost, or something like that, where, you look at the one that's being built first. So Havant Thicket down in Portsmouth is the one that's, really furthest ahead. And I almost feel like, well, let's just let them do that and copy that model and learn, and improve on that model, similar to how they've done in the nuclear sector for Sizewell, for Hinkley, and then Sizewell C, and almost take that workforce with you to the next project, and don't do them in silos as individual companies. We should be doing it as a water sector with somebody, I hate the phrase a guiding mind, but maybe we should have a guiding mind sort of. And I just don't see that at all with these. And these are massive projects and they cost a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. And
I think it's a real challenge, for the water sector, I guess, in terms of that that guiding mind. I guess that's part of what Rapid was set up to do, to look at these major infrastructure projects. But yeah, it's got
Are
to
they
be.
doing that though? I see no evidence Rapid's actually doing that. They're approving things and they're saying your design needs to be better and they're critical of the plans. But I don't see them saying to Anglian and Cambridge, why don't you speak to Thames about how they're planning to fill their reservoir? Why don't you go down and speak to Portsmouth about the Havant Thicket? I don't see any of that at all.
It's a fair challenge. It's a fair challenge, and it's not something that historically water companies or utilities in general have been particularly good at. Is learning from each other, collaborating. It does tend to be done in silos. I guess, yeah. It's in terms of a modular approach. Obviously, there are going to be differences in terms of the site, the size, location, what the reservoir is set up to do. I mean, I know is set up not just to provide Portsmouth water that's leading on it, but to transfer water into the southern water region. There will be different reasons for each reservoir, so they will each have their own bespoke kind of design needs. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be crossover, there's got to be learnings, certainly, and maybe that is happening, and I'm not aware of it, but yeah, there certainly should be a push for that to happen. And yeah, and as you say, who is directing them towards doing that? Here is another potential unintended consequence of spending the next few years reforming regulation in water, is that you lose oversight at a crucial time for some of these big infrastructure projects. Because if in 10 years' time we haven't made serious progress on these kind of projects, and we are staring into really worrying water scarcity situation, then that pressure that we're already seeing on the water companies is just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah. Maybe it should be taken out of the existing sort of regulatory framework then. Someone like NISTA should take the lead on it, or anyway, that moves us on to the big talking point of this year so far.
Yes, talking of pressure on water companies, yeah.
Talking of pressure on water companies,
or lack of pressure, really, I suppose, has been the problem in certain areas.
Yeah, it's not been a happy new year thus far for South East Water, has it?
No, it wasn't really a happy bonfire night lead up to Christmas into New Year. Let's hope they're going to have a nice pancake day, because it's been So we're talking about South East Water, the ongoing debacle there, which is lots of things are being conflated in the sort of wider media coverage, but there's a number of things that have happened with South East Water, starting with problems in Tunbridge Wells before Christmas, which was due to a breakdown in the water treatment process, which affected Tunbridge Wells for quite a prolonged period of time. South East Water talking about that as very much a freak incident, something they hadn't seen before. The Drinking Water Inspectorate giving a slightly different approach to that. So that
slightly
ran
different. I think
very
downplaying it there. The complete opposite.
Complete opposite. We'll come on to talk about that rather spiky select committee appearance in a minute. But yeah, just to continue the narrative of what's happened. So going into the new year, the increasingly disgusted people of Tunbridge Wells have had more problems with their water supply, and it's also been in our backyard, hasn't it? So our offices are in East Grinstead in West Sussex, and we've not been able to go into our offices this week because the water has been out for the week, and it's been quite interesting, hasn't it? In this, writing about something that is, you could literally look out the window if we were in the office and see the impact of this.
Yeah. So where should we start with this? Should we start with the EFRA committee meetings, or should we go back further? Let's start with the EFRA committee meetings. So I thought that was a really damning day for South East Water, personally.
It was, and the background to that, of course, is that the Dave Hinton, the CEO of South East Water, had not been very visible. Well, not visible at all during the supply problems in Tunbridge Wells before Christmas, and that had started to become the story. Which is not where you ever want it to be. Front pages on the local paper about where's Dave, the the Nationals,
The local
repeatedly calling for him.
politicians really went for him, didn't they?
Really
The
went for him.
local.
Well, and they were from day one. The Tunbridge Wells MP was calling for him to step down.
Yeah.
Like a few hours into the incident, really.
Yeah, I felt it was a bit of an overreaction, to be honest, at the start of things. These things happen, you have to deal with it. But as every day went on, you just thought, come on, man, get out there.
Yeah, and
say something.
His defence, and which he put this defence in front of the EFRA committee as well, is that he is a very operational CEO. So he's come up through the ranks. He is he's an operations man, and he wanted to be on the grounds and helping his team to understand what the problem was and how they were going to fix it. And
you can do both, though, can't you? You can do both.
I think you can. So. Yes, I think
you can spend half an hour in the morning doing I look back to when the Cryptosporidium outbreak happened in the southwest region, and they were doing daily videos with the chief executives.
Yep.
And senior figures, just giving an update on a day. They weren't necessarily, going on Good Morning Britain every day or BBC News every day, but they were doing these little videos. They were visible. You could see they were there. It takes 20 minutes. That's all it takes. Yeah. And then get yourself stuck in if that's what you're best at and where you think the time is. But I just think he almost doubled down, didn't he? Once the criticism came, he sort of doubled down on the fact that he wasn't going to come out, didn't he? And I think the EFRA committee were quite light touch on him on that point. Actually, I think they could have taken him to task a bit more over that. But
I mean, his point was that when he does a media appearance, he doesn't get asked about the incident. He gets asked about executive pay and dividends. In this instance, I mean, probably that would have come up. But I think there were lots of people who wanted to ask him about the incident as well. I think that.
Sorry, that's why I say give the example of the Southwest. Just do these little videos. Do them yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Put them out yourself. Yeah. You don't need nasty, horrible journalist asking you a question, but you can be visible.
That's true. You can still do the update, but it doesn't appear that anything has changed this time round. I mean, he's still apparently in there trying to fix things, not out there apologizing and defending the company, which I mean there's real anger in the air. People are absolutely furious. And okay, well, let's carry on talking about the EFRA committee, and then we can talk about the reasons why people are furious in East Grinstead.
Yes, so the EFRA committee, for those who didn't catch it or haven't seen any of the coverage of it, Dave Hinton went first, and I thought he did a decent job of explaining. When I listened to it, I thought, oh, fair enough, this is a freak event, really difficult, unforeseen. And to clarify, this EFRA committee was about the initial outage in Tunbridge Wells, back end of November, start of December, wasn't it?
That's correct.
That time, wasn't it? Yeah. It wasn't about the most recent outage, which actually started on the day of the EFRA committee meeting. That must be. Can you imagine that day that they must have had? So you're up before MPs. You're getting grilled. They're not a soft committee. They're quite a forthright committee. Particularly the chair, Alistair Carmichael. We've seen him take all the water company bosses sort of to task over bonus pay and company structure and culture and all sorts of things over the past year, 18 months. And so Dave Hinton does his evidence session. I thought it went as well as it probably could have. He explained how it was a freak event, how it was unforeseen. And then immediately after him, before he's even out the building probably, Marcus Rink from the DWI has his go and immediately contradicts everything that David Hinton's just said, and effectively accuses him of lying without using the words quite so strongly. And then he gets back to his southeast region, and then there's another outage in Tunbridge Wells. I mean, God, you can't make it up, can you?
And it was interesting that session with Marcus Rink as well. And I think it's worth just taking a moment to talk about Marcus, because he's a figure that will be very familiar to people in the water sector, and obviously particularly in the drinking water sector, but largely somebody who has gone under the radar. Even with, I think if you asked around Parliament, not many people would have heard of Marcus Rink before, but he is becoming kind of a real superstar in the sector now. And I've not really heard a select committee chair kind of praise a witness much before, but they were really impressed with Marcus, and I thought he gave very 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 measured but forthright rebuttal to a lot of what Dave Hinton had said. And it's interesting to see Marcus's star rise, because obviously all of the current regulators, the DWI, Ofwat, and the Environment Agency are all kind of feeding into the government's plans for this new super regulator. But there's a strong pushback from the industry about having them too involved going forward. That these are seen as people who are have been involved in a failing regime, and that they shouldn't be involved further on. Marcus, I think, has got a very strong chance of being a very senior figure within this this new regulator. He's very passionate about drinking water being central to this new regulator, and he's really pushing that. And yeah, I think if his profile continues to rise, I could see him being really quite central to this new regulator. So. Yeah, which is interesting to see.
They came out of the Cunliffe Review well, didn't they? It's all
very
grown from there. They
yes,
sort of were praised.
Indeed.
Off the back of that, the only one to sort of come out of it with any credibility, really, weren't they?
That's right. Yeah. So his, as you say, his evidence, was in stark contrast to Dave Hinton, which has resulted in quite an unusual letter from the chair of the committee to the chair of South East Water, Chris Train, asking questions about how these two sets of evidence can be so different, and recalling both those parties, the CEO of South East Water and of the Drinking Water Inspectorate, and the chair of South East Water, and asking questions about whether there are wider issues at the heart of South East Water, wider corporate issues. And of course, since then, we've seen Ofwat open an investigation. DWR are already doing an investigation to South East Water, looking at the Ofwat one is the first one that they have done under the new customer license condition, which is about how companies are protecting and communicating with customers, particularly vulnerable customers, and if found guilty of breaching the license condition, South East could be fined up to 10% of their turnover, which I think is in the region of about 30 million. I think.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit, because obviously, as you mentioned, we have intimate knowledge of the latest outage.
Yes.
And one of the big criticisms has been around, where South East put its bottled water stations and how it communicated that to customers.
Yes, fascinating one.
Let's discuss that.
Yeah, not to get into a granular description of the ring road system in East Grinstead, but it's one of those areas where you look at a decision that has been made and you go, oh my God, who decided that? That's a terrible decision to make. So this is set the scene. Saturday morning, supply is interrupted for East Grinstead because of, I think it's a combination of the freeze thaw and the storm. So water goes off, and bottled water stations are set up, as is the protocol for water companies. However, one of the locations that was chosen by South East Water was in the car park of Sainsbury's supermarket in East Grinstead. Now, this supermarket, right by our office, actually, is just off a horrible ring road in East Greenwich was always snarled up. So it's the main access to the site is through there. It's also right next to the train station, which on that particular day or over that weekend was shut, as is often the case with train stations this time of year, and it was a rail replacement service. So a really difficult to access site that is also being used by commuters who've got to go on a rail replacement service. It was a disastrous decision, and I think it's really important, and I don't want it to sound like I'm just talking about this because it was in our backyard, but I think it illustrates something which is really important, which is that there are all sorts of not excuses necessarily, but there are reasons why supply may go off. There are historic issues with underinvestments in assets. There are wider problems around the water sector, and this is all part of that kind of national conversation that we need to have. So there's stuff that the water companies can point to. This is why this has happened, but it undermines that message when you fail in your duty to do something which is entirely within your capabilities. You should have people planning those sorts of scenarios who are looking at that kind of thing. Is this an appropriate place to put that that station? Is this going to have major access problems? And on the day when that was decided, somebody checked the train timetables. It's not rocket science to do that. This is totally an own goal for South East Water that has compounded a lot of those problems. People will forgive supply interruptions if the company handles it well. We've not long ago had a power cut in our area, and because I'm signed up to the alerts, immediately got an alert from an engineer who said, can't give an estimate at the moment, but we're going to get your power back on as soon as we can. And then I was getting sort of regular updates from a named person, and it was sort of ticking down, X number of properties now on back on supply. And I was really impressed with that. So although it was a inconvenience for me, because I couldn't work, couldn't do anything. But I came out of that situation, instead of being angry, being quite impressed with the response. And I think people will appreciate that. But when you compound an ongoing supply interruption with a problem like that, which people in the local area are going, well, they should have known about that. It's totally avoidable. And it's something that the water companies should learn from. They should really. I don't know what should be the outcome of this, but there should be some sort of review of those emergency plans, because this isn't just about the priority services register, which Ofwat has now got more oversight on and introduced stricter controls on that in the current price control. Obviously, that's important to look after vulnerable people as well. But these are the plans for looking after everybody. So you've just you have alienated an entire town at a one fell swoop.
That feels like two issues almost though. There's the emergency planning, but then there's also the comms, right? And the comms comes.
Yes, the comms. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
From David Hinton not being visible, but then also the comms, like you were describing there, to people with the regular updates. I don't think there has been. I think there's been. If you look at the website, it's one or two a day. It feels like there's not been. You're not getting that update every hour, and obviously maybe things haven't changed every hour, but it's just being reassured that you've not been forgot about and things are actually happening, right? That's I think we had a very similar thing where we lost power on Christmas Day while we were cooking the Christmas dinner, and the network were really good at I mean, it was Christmas Day, so obviously a lot of people were probably getting in touch and asking, but they were really good. We're expecting you back on at this time, and the half hourly updates almost. It was almost too many. Not that you can do too many, but
you're right.
I feel like it's two things.
It is, and I'm at risk of sort of conflating two different things there. But it was more a kind of illustration of how how I came out of a situation where I could have been annoyed, being actually kind of impressed with it. The comms is another thing. Now this is something that Southeast Water have been criticised about in the past, and I actually do think they did better this time. They did have a kind of live incident map, and they were doing updates. The problem, I think, was that they just didn't have much to update. So initially they're talking about, we're looking at supply coming on in, tomorrow or the day after or something. And then it eventually became, we just can't tell you. Now, I think the team doing the communications there are in a pretty impossible task, because if they can't say when it's going to come back on, then what are they supposed to do? They can't lie to people. They can't set. There's no point in kind of raising people's hopes if you don't know when the supply is going to come back on. So I do appreciate that from a comms point of view, that is a really difficult, difficult challenge. But it certainly wasn't made better by the provisions that they taken.
Well, I guess they can do more in terms of talking about those provisions.
Yeah,
they
true.
Remind people where the bottled water stations are. I saw the council was putting out a list of like where you can go for a shower if you haven't been able to have a shower. And is there any reason why the water company can't be doing that as well, or should they be, or should it be more joined up with the local authorities? I mean, these are all questions, like you say, that need to be answered in the coming months as we sort of reflect on what's gone on. The next EFRA committee meeting is going to be interesting viewing, I would say.
It really is, yeah. I presume that they will bring in the what's happened in East Grinstead over the last couple of weeks, even though it was initially about the situation before Christmas, which was was an entirely different cause of a problem. But I would imagine they'll go into something more widely. And I mean, I guess the big question looming over this is, to be blunt, will Dave Hinton keep his job? The water sector isn't really known for for being kind of trigger happy with sacking people. CEOs tend to stay in place for quite a long time in the water sector, and I know internally Dave Hinton has a lot of support. He's very well respected in the company. As I said, he's risen through the ranks. But it feels like I can't really remember a CEO with so much pressure on them. Thames is succession of CEOs certainly have been in the spotlight quite a lot, but this feels different. Southern Water again in the past, their leaders have had a lot of pressure put on them, but this one is I've never seen anything quite like this, and there'll be a lot of pressure on Southeast Water, and not least I would imagine actually from across the sector, because it is the last thing that other water companies want to see is the sector getting a bad name like this. And they're sitting there sort of helplessly watching the drama unfold. So it will be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I did wonder whether it would have got as much attention, say, if this had happened, in Newcastle or in Sheffield, or is it in the southeast where all the journalists live?
That's a very good point. Yeah. I feel like it would. But yeah, it's definitely not hurt. There's been probably you wouldn't have had as many reporters on the ground, I think, in Newcastle, but yeah, no, I think it still would have been. I don't think wherever it is in the country, I don't think that the media pass up an opportunity to stoke fury of the water companies.
So that point on the impact on the wider sector moves us on quite nicely to our look forward about what we're going to expect over the next couple of weeks. There's a couple of announcements that we were hoping to have seen already. Hoping to have seen before Christmas, and then hoping to have seen the first week of January, and then hoping to see the second week of January, and we're still waiting for them now. The first one being the water white paper.
Mm-hmm.
How confident are you, firstly, that we're going to see it next week? And secondly, how confident are you that it's going to actually say anything?
I'm probably more confident that we'll see it than it will say anything. This is classic government kind of white paper, right? It's a constantly shifting landscape, but we really do need to see something from the government. And I'm kind of almost bored of hearing myself say this, but so much rests on what they want out of this process and what they want the water sector to look like and do, and how willing they are for people to pay for that. So we'll be reading between the lines as much as we'll be reading what is in the white paper. I would hope that it gives at least some kind of high level kind of strategic view of the sector, but I'm not expecting much in terms of a roadmap. Big thing to look out for in there really is any indication that they are going to start to appoint a shadow board for this new regulator. I think that would be the key thing. But am I confident that we'll have that in there? Not really.
Surely it will have at least an indication of it, you would think.
I
Saying
hope so.
that, I conversations I've had with people I won't name have suggested that the white paper was given to the comms department at DEFRA sort of early December, when it was originally slated to come out, and the response from the comms team at DEFRA is not sure what the news hook here is, which is worrying, right? And telling
A little bit.
that if a comms person, can't pick out a line in it.
Well, it could mean one or two things, couldn't it? It could mean that it is so light on detail that they can't pull anything out of it. Or it could be that it is so complex and it's gone into such detail on all of the complicated trade-offs in the water sector that it's very difficult for you to get your head around it.
Yeah,
I have
let's
an idea of which way it might have been.
What's happened to you, James? Where's this optimism coming from?
That's a New Year's resolution.
Is it? Right, there we go. And then obviously the other announcement we were hoping for before Christmas, and well, to be honest, been hoping for since end of September, is the Warm Homes Plan, which I think I boldly first stated that it was going to be unveiled ahead of the party conference season, which is nearly half a year ago now. And,
another one which is a big part of the culture wars there as well. What's the approach to electrification of heat there, and again, who pays for that? That's a one that governments have been passing the buck on for years. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that.
From what we're hearing, that one is going to be pretty meaty though, and have some actual concrete decisions in it. So maybe that one at least will be worth the wait. And we'll reconvene in 2 weeks to discuss, pour over both of those. We potentially will have some indication about Rio 3 appeals then as well. We've not even touched on that, but let's save that for another day, shall we?
Let's do that.
So thanks for joining me today, James, and
thank you.
Look forward to catching up in a couple of weeks.